What's up, Wraeclast? Wabacha here, along with Hedgie, and today we're going to be talking about our first impressions of the Awakening. You know, just what's been going on with everything. Hedgie, how you doing, man?
What's up, guys? It's Hedgie, and I'm having so much fun with the Tempest League and the new Act 4. It's really polished, and I just love talking about Path of Exile.
As always, as expected, as most of us do. Just so everyone knows, I actually did set up an email for us to use for feedback or comments or whatever we decide to use it for. It is whatsuprayclass@gmail.com. So I will be using that for everything I mentioned. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started with some of our first topics. And actually, it's funny that Hedgie said that he's been having a lot of fun playing Tempest League, because I, on the other hand, I am feeling like Tempest League is kind of underwhelming, in all honesty. So you say you've been having fun playing it. Why is that? Not to say that there's no reason to have fun playing it, but
Well, I mean, I was kind of in the same boat as you. You know, when I first started it, I was just like, okay, these colorful circles are, spawning around me, and I don't even know like what the incentive is. Like, I started to stand in it. It didn't last long. It was like maybe 4 seconds or something like that. I can't remember the exact duration, but I was just like, do I really want to sit here and wait for the buff to go off so that I can utilize this? Or, you know, what are these things? It doesn't. I'm kind of confused. I'm sitting there, I'm like, how is this enhancing my gaming experience? And the buffs were like too short to carry over to the next pack, so it's kind of frustrating. But as the difficulty ramped up, man, you learn to appreciate, and it's just kind of like when a booby trap, essentially, something that you can't step in or you don't want anything to touch, and it does change up the gameplay. I felt like in Cruel, along with the map mods, man, it's a challenge.
I mean, I can see that. But my point is, because you and I are around the same area progression wise. I believe you just got to Merciless, right? You just did Cruel Malachi today.
Yeah, I did Cruel Malachi today. I'm level 64, I
And
think.
today would also be Saturday, by the way. We're recording this Saturday night.
Yeah.
Well, I'm actually about to get to Cruel Malachi, and I get what you're saying, right? Like the Tempests, they are something that you have to respect, because they can be either very good for you or very bad for you. But as soon as you remember that, and as soon as you start respecting them, that's when it's underwhelming.
Well, I feel like they're more bad than they are ever good.
Yeah, yeah, I
Like,
could see that.
it feels good when you can take a buff to the next pack and start the fight, like miles ahead, but there's too many fights or engagements that you'll encounter where it'll happen as a surprise, and the mobs have high HP or higher HP, and when you don't have great gear or the links that you want, it takes time to DPS these mobs. So sometimes all of a sudden you'll be fighting like a rare pack, you're like, I got this, and then all of a sudden, boom, something goes off somewhere, and then they're all hasted, or
Right.
something crazy will happen, or you'll get frozen, or you'll need to run, and then your means of escape is blocked off by that giant freeze, or
Yeah.
it's just a bunch of stuff that can happen.
Yeah, well, I could see, this actually may be the fault of the build that I'm playing. I am playing Poison Arrow, and, Poison Arrow, especially with the way that I've been doing it, I haven't been doing the traditional level to 40 as Spectral Throw. I've been playing Poison Arrow pretty much through and through, and I've been sticking with bow builds, which I want to talk about a little bit later, because leveling his bow early is horrendous. But anyway, it could be the fact that Poison Arrow doesn't. There are certain builds are in Path of Exile that won't benefit so much from the Tempest, and you've been playing a melee, which I could see that being a little bit more impactful to you, either positively or negatively. So maybe that's why. But and here's the other reason why it's actually, I feel like it's a little underwhelming. If anyone was watching Hellman yesterday trying to do Malachi, and we saw what happened right when he walked in. But then when we saw Angry Weasel do Malachi, they were talking about the Tempest and the buffs, right? But then they were just waiting it out. Now, Angry Weasel didn't do this, but Hellman specifically waited out the Tempest buff. I understand that was insane for him. I'm not saying that it was him being, a scared player or a weak player or anything. He did a fantastic job getting to that point, and unfortunately it became very anticlimactic. But, it just, someone said recently, and I can't remember who, I really wish I did, but someone said the best thing about the Tempest League was the fact that sometimes the buffs aren't even there. Sometimes you don't have to worry about anything. And
see,
I think it was either Etup or Hellman that said that.
I mean, first off, I want to thank Hellman for that rip because that is gonna go down in the records. And man, it's probably one of my favorites, if not the favorite rip. Like everything was on the line. He had a fair shot, and man, he went out like a champion.
Oh man.
And just because he's like laughing about it, just makes it all.
He was a very good sport about it.
Yeah,
that's
very good
for
sport.
sure. Because everyone,
Yeah.
it was definitely funny. I mean,
I honestly prefer it happen that way than any other way.
This is true.
Because it was just so like it was 11 out of 10 on the entertainment scale.
Yeah, all that build up.
But yeah, you were talking about the Tempest and stuff. Man, I really don't like that because it's at any given hour, you could have something that insanely buffs you. I've like the best case scenario, we've seen some crazy Tempest hours for Malachi where you get like proximity shield. Like essentially the evangelist. You become an evangelist, and so do all your minions if you have them. So that's like insane. All those volleys that he does, and probably that tentacle ability. As long as he's not in your proximity shield, you're not taking damage. So that can be insanely useful. On the flip side, when I got to Cruel Malachi, the entire zone, what's that zone called?
Harvest.
Is it the Harvest?
Yeah, the Harvest is the one with the bosses before.
Yeah, the mods I had were Shocked Ground, monsters deal extra damage.
Yeah, I remember you
50%
saying
extra.
that on your stream.
Yeah, and then and lightning resistance, and I was like, dude, there's no way. The guy is already hard enough. So I was pretty much gated out of my progression for an hour. I mean, it is kind of cool that the players have to make an interesting decision like that, but man, 1 hour where I felt like I should do something else because it's just not a smart thing to do. You're not gonna give him 50% lightning damage in addition to having shot ground and those what do you call it, blue circles. It's just like,
and that's why I find it kind of underwhelming because all you did was wait it out. It just stopped you from playing. Granted, there's a lot of things that someone could do in an hour, like trade or set up acquisition, blah 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 blah, but you just waited it out. And that's what a lot of people do with some of these rippy Tempests, and it just makes it I don't know, it's just like people are choosing not to play for an hour, and that takes away. It's just like if GGG goes out of their way to give us a feature that is to make the game harder, but then when it's implemented, people just avoid it completely, and the game is the same difficulty. That's what this feels like to me. And because of that, like I said, it's just a little underwhelming because the ones that are good, which, as you've said, and it seems like there are way more that are dangerous than ones that are good because depending on your build and everything, like you might not be able to maintain that buff. You might not be able to maintain the increase in size and the reduction in damage. You might not be able to maintain that, but the bad ones, you get it once and it kills you. So, it's just.
I see what I mean. I really don't like how there's such a huge, emphasis on, being able to kill and finish and complete Act 4, where some people get really screwed and some people get really buffed. That doesn't seem appropriate. Now I can understand. Like I don't know. I don't ever feel like it should gate your progression by an hour just because it's just simply ridiculous. Maybe tone down the mods itself or make it so that you can't get shot ground and extra lightning when you're trying to do cruel Act 4 progression or merciless progression, or I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm not sure what the solution is, but
yeah, I actually, I don't think there is actually a really good solution. Unfortunately, I think it is probably going to stay that way, where
Just
people
ban it.
avoid it.
Just ban it to end game map bosses or something.
Yeah,
Or
yeah, I don't know. That's just kind of why it feels underwhelming to me, and yeah, it's just a little weird. But and on top of that, okay, so we've all started to see Act Four now. Personally, this was the first time that I actually ever did the end of Act Four. The last week of the beta, even though I played almost all the beta, the last week of the beta, I didn't play at all. I wanted to try it hardcore first time on live. I wanted to go in there pretty much blind, outside of what I heard on streams or what I saw on streams, which is a huge help. But these fights are pretty hard, and
oh yeah,
like they in themselves are enough gating outside of
yeah.
the Tempest buffs that you could get. And I do apologize, guys. Neither one of us are Warbands players, and we would like to hear what you guys think about Warbands so far, and let us know. But as for Tempest League, the new bosses are gating enough.
Honestly, Warbound sounds really cool. I really like kind of like the what's that promenade map? Halls of the Grandmaster. I'm guessing it's kind of like that, where the AI is really strong and the abilities are very diverse, and kind of got to think on the fly, and all these different cool interactions with bosses. The difficulty of that, it's very, very appealing. Um, so I am kind of sad that Warbands is not the hardcore league. I think it's much more interesting, and mechanically, I don't know what the loot is like over there, if they're getting extra drops. And I mean, I know I'm not seeing anything. We have that one Tempest that does what, sells all, or
Transmorgify or whatever.
yeah, it pretty
Mm.
much turns all your items that you would find, and it would give you the vendor value. So if you were to find a rare, you could get alch shards, transmute shards. Most of it's just scroll fragments. And
Or if you find a divine orb, you don't know if you got a six link or just a divine
oh
orb.
man, I didn't even think about that. That would suck. You're just like,
But hey, at least you got a divine orb. Those things
uh,
are gonna be the business.
oh man, I'd rather have a tabula rasa.
Oh man. Oh, that's right. A tabula rasa would. See, I mean,
Yeah.
I knew a six link would give a
Actually,
divine orb.
never mind. I take that back, because you can't. It won't do uniques.
Oh,
Yeah, it won't give you the value. So a tabula would drop just straight up. So if you did get a
oh.
divine, it could be just the
Well,
currency drop,
good thing.
or it could be, that six link that just got auto vendored. Is it an upside or a downside? I think it's a downside all around.
I think it is a downside because it's annoying. Because whenever you play Path of Exile and you fill up your inventory and you go back and you sell everything, you get the shards and the full alteration that you completed and the currency. You just put it in your in your stash, right? But now, if you get this Tempest and you're going through a map, or you're going through a zone or a map or whatever, you don't want to sit there and pick up alteration shards. It's
Yeah.
like an alteration shard does not look good. It's not appealing, and it just kind of. And then on top of that, you don't know what it came from. So it's like troll. It's like, here, we're gonna make this stuff harder for you to pick up. And it's gonna fill up your screen. And I don't know how loot filters, roll with that. I don't know what settings people have on their loot filters to deal with alteration shards. But
Wait,
I
what do maps vendor into? Scroll fragments do?
I don't know. I personally haven't gotten it yet. So I've seen people get it, and I'm like, that looks obnoxious.
Yeah,
But
I mean, I ran into it twice, and at first I was like, what the hell is going on? And then I started to read it, and I was like, oh, wait, I don't want this to happen.
and then you left and you gated your progression for an hour. Great, perfect. No, I don't know if you did that.
Yeah,
I'm
I
just
didn't. I
joking.
didn't do that. I just avoided. I like killed everything to the side, and I was like, "Oh, nobody touched this." But yeah, I mean, with my build, I'm in the literal middle of every pack. I'm just leaping into the middle and then sweeping. So it's
Yeah,
not easy for me to like sit there and try to drag something into a booby trap. It's just not worth it. Not to mention that the AI and the actual movement speed of the mob, or if it's just gonna sit there and turret. So I don't see any benefits to trying to drag stuff into it, but
it is
I
what it
definitely
is.
Yeah, I definitely see them just more or less as a booby trap and occasional buff here and there.
Well, moving away from Tempest League, let's go ahead and talk about the gating, or what we were talking about with gating, and how the end game content in Act 4 is now kind of gating enough. And like I said, that was the first time that I actually went through and that I did the harvest. This was the first time I fought Malagaro, the first time I fought Dodre, and the fights were hard. And then Malachi was hard as well. It was just long and it was scary.
With that initial thought, I want to know what you think. Do you think is overtuned or undertuned?
I think it's fine. I'm going to go out there. I'm actually just going to say it's fine. With most builds, as long as you know what to avoid and as long as your build has started to pick up its momentum and its damage and everything else that goes with your build, which most builds start to take shape after level 30. Between level 30 and 40 is when a player, will be playing their Ice Crash build. I imagine it starts to feel a lot better, right? That's when you get multi-strike. That's when you get those support gems. So the only reason that I would feel like it's overtuned was because I was playing Poison Arrow, and the only thing I have to scale Poison Arrow is slower projectiles, and I didn't even have that. So I think it's in a good place right now, but it's very rippy. Like
Well,
it's
just wait till you get to Cruel, and I want to ask that question again.
well, my damage has started to take off a little bit, so I think
Well,
I'll be okay.
I'm not questioning your damage being good. I'm talking about the mob incoming damage.
Oh, right.
But I mean, yeah, it's interesting because I played the beta. Once it was introduced, I honestly feel like the Malachi fight was nerfed from the beta because I felt like the abilities were not as spammy and the damage. I don't know if they fine tuned it or if it's my build or that changed and the damage meant, but
I think it's just the fact that you've done it before on your build.
really. I mean,
Hmm.
because the AI, if I go through and look at my other kill, I felt like Malachi ported a lot more when I was on my magma orb guy. That might be because I was in range
Hmm.
or out of range, out of melee range, and now my or not my ice crusher, but my leap sweeper is all up in it. But yeah, I mean, and Malachi didn't seem as hard, but that may be because I'm more familiar with the fight.
Right. And what did you do the Malachi fight? Like, what were your defenses? Because mine were about I had 1.8k health, and I had like 50% evasion. So
So,
and I was just keeping up endurance charges, so I didn't really have too much issue with it. It took a long time, but
okay, so I think I had around 1650, 1700 health, and I had three endurance charges, and I had fortify, and I was using enfeeble.
hmm.
But I used enfeeble and endurance charges on my magma kill too. Uh, I don't know. The AI just seems a little different. But as far as the bosses going into Cruel, holy smokes. Deodre, that, fat boss that, does that triple ring curse.
Which is cool.
Yeah, which is really cool. That guy is so rippy. I was keeping up in feeble and I was putting up endurance charges. I kept a fortify and I was getting my shit stomped. Like I had to port out like 5 times during that 5 or 6 times. And the other bosses not so much. Piety on the ugly face Piety, that was super rippy too. I mean, yeah, the laser beams, but what made it really rippy was the collision detection. The little worms. If you didn't have some kind of way to deal with, you know, clearing the actual area and dealing with the balls, that was it was very, very painful. I think I ported out like 3 times to kill her. She was probably harder than most of the other fights. Dodri, that was my near death experience. He almost killed me with a couple of volleys.
I believe
Granted,
Dodre is a she.
oh yeah, she. But
Well, I would actually kind of agree with you that Piety 2.0, Awakening Piety is what I'm going to call her. Awakening Piety is pretty hard, even in normal, because she hits really hard. That, what is it? The rotating beam that she does.
Yeah, the Sethan ability.
Oh man, it is, that hits super hard. And every single time it hit me, it scared me
Yeah.
because I've been talking a lot about it with my guildmates, and I'm like, what damage is this? Because I don't think it's lightning, because I took the same amount of damage when I was 75 lightning resist as I did when I popped my lightning resist flask, so I was 85. I took the
Oh,
same
yeah.
amount of damage. So I have a feeling that it's mostly physical, but it hits so hard. And okay, so pre-awakening, you would beat the game, you would kill Dominus with 1200 health, right?
Hmm.
And that was kind of a lot. You could do it with 1,000, sub 1,000. It's not that big of a deal. And I understand that there's a lot of things that you would just dodge a Dominus and you wouldn't take the damage. In this Piety Awakening fight, you take that damage. As far as I could tell, there's no way to outrun it.
Oh yeah.
I heard that Alkaiser, which great to see Alkaiser back, because I always like watching Alkaiser play. But I saw Alkaiser, or I think I heard about Alkaiser using Flame Dash to avoid it completely, but I couldn't avoid it at all. And it actually stopped me from moving forward a lot because I just didn't feel comfortable going down to 40%, 30% health on a fight that I've never done before.
I mean, yeah, I mean, as long as you stay close to her, I mean, it doesn't take much. You can do it with 0% movement speed. I mean, running a Quicksilver definitely helps big time. You just run on that little inner circle, and if you're on the outskirts, there's no way you're gonna outrun that. So you better like leap over it and take like one tick, or, you know, pour through it or something. But yeah, she's probably too overtuned. It's kind of nerve-wracking because when you fight her, you're like forced to make these decisions. Do I get hit by the beam, or do I
Right.
get hit by these pom-poms? And honestly, I was just standing in it, but the pom-poms, when you stand in it, it makes that electrocuting sounds like tick, 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 tick.
Yeah, it's
So
scary.
it's just like you're like, what the hell is happening? This sounds bad. But that's much more preferable than the actual beam. So I'm just like, whatever.
Right.
I'll just sit in this thing and, regen through a flask.
Yeah, the sound that we all associate with the tickling lightning tendrils now
Yeah.
sounds really scary in
Yeah.
Awakening Piety. And yeah, she was actually a pretty hard fight. And yeah, I didn't see a way. And it's just that beam hits so hard.
Hmm.
And but again, I'm evasion, and so my initial thought to that was it's obviously physical damage. And then some people were like, well, no, it's physical lightning. And I tried to flask through it, and it still hit me really, really hard. So I I'm willing to say that Piety, Awakening Piety, is a little too high in damage, a little overtuned, but not enough to throw a fit over it, right? It just made me play a lot safer and everything else. I was actually scared of Malagaro, and I went into Malagaro, and that fight was easy.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I thought Malagaro was hard. The way people talked about the Malagaro fight made me think he was gonna like EK me in the face and I was gonna die. But
Like
that did
the
not
Jungle
happen.
Valley spider.
Yeah, that's what I actually imagined, and that is not at all what happened. It was just is pretty straightforward. So,
Well, I
but
mean, it ramps up definitely with
the difficulty,
well, I mean, well, the difficulty plus the fact that, in normal you have zero chaos resist, and cruel you have -20 or whatever, and then you get -60 in merciless. So,
right?
with those chaos bombs suddenly go from, it's not that, yeah, it's not that hard, I can just flask it, to, oh my god, this is starting to hurt big time. But,
Right.
in reference, I probably only had to port out twice in cruel difficulty. That may change in merciless though, especially with bad chaos resist. It's going to be very stressful, and there's going to be more incentive for me to dodge. But yeah, I think Deodre and Piety, the ugly Piety, those probably need some nerfs. I love the mechanics. The Deodre or the Piety fight, I'm not a fan of the collision detection. There's a little bit too much. Those grubs are way too thick, uh, and it's hard to run around when everything's blocking your way. But I guess it incentivizes you to actually kill them. But
Right.
what I wanted to ask you is, do you think if you didn't watch, streams or didn't get any intel, do you think that all those fights would communicate to the player of like what you should avoid, what's actually going on, and do you think you would be able to survive, deathless the first time through, knowing no information?
Yes, I think I would. Maybe
Okay.
the only one that I wouldn't would be Dodre, because we've never seen a mechanic like that before. We've never seen you know, a, an area where when you walk into it, you are cursed. And then there's that overlap, which isn't, I don't think that overlap is actually communicated too well. And then on top of that, sometimes it looks like you're out of the overlap, but you're not. So you have to pay you have to pay attention to it, but that's the only thing that I don't think is communicated very well. I mean, Awakening Piety, when that beam goes around, it's scary as hell. When you hear the lightning tendrils, you think, what is that? Like those,
Hmm.
that's fine, right? Malachi, Malachi looks, the only kind of thing that I would say is not communicated very well with Malachi is the explosion that he does when he appears from the ground.
Really, I felt like that was communicated pretty well.
I don't think it's communicated very well because look at Val. Look at the Val fight. We have Val who comes up from the ground, but there's no explosion. What is there is obviously when Val comes up from the ground, you want to get away from it because you don't want to be in slam range. You don't want to take the lightning shotgun to the face, right? You don't want to deal with those things, so you don't stand right on top of him.
Well,
But
the
if you
oh,
do, you could get out. But on Malachi, that's not really the case. I mean, if you see him coming up and you're like, well, I'm just going to melee him, and then all of a sudden it explodes, that's not really communicated well the first time. I mean, afterwards, once you know that it happens, it's easy.
well, see, the way, whenever I run into unknowns, in which I did, the beta blind, I didn't, I didn't watch any streams, I didn't listen to any information because I wanted to see how well GGG can design something and communicate to the player that, there are certain dangers that you need to avoid. And there was a lot of familiarity, whatever, with the bosses and their animations. Like what I did for each boss fight is I just ran around in circles, and if you do that, you can probably avoid almost all the damage.
Right.
And I just got to see what the bosses do, how many skills he's gonna rotate through, and I just stood out of melee range, just running around in circles, you know, trying to get used to his abilities. And because of that rune that spawns on the ground, just like the Touch of God, and there's a couple other things, and then that snap, that bam, you get a visual cue and you get an audio cue of holy crap, that looks pretty nasty. And you could tell that he doesn't when it comes up every single
So
time.
okay, well, so what you were taking, so with that said, that means that you were taking a more cautious approach to it. You wanted to see all their abilities, but there are a lot of players out there, myself included, that I would just start fighting something. Like I would just go in there and I will
That's what
just,
we call YOLO.
yeah, I'm like, I'm gonna kill this guy. Let's see what happens. And that's the reason why, because and here's the other thing too. Obviously, with Malachi, everyone knows it's a harder fight, and so yeah, probably even though I am a more YOLO player, I probably would have been cautious. But then, if I was a melee character, what would have happened was, I would have been cautious. I would have avoided the big tentacles that come out. I would have avoided the obvious tri-ball rotating egg scrambler ride at a carnival that shoots out everywhere. Like I would have avoided all that. But the second that he went down in the ground and I started to see him come up, I would have leap slammed onto him and I would have just start going at him and then I would have died. That's why I don't think that's not communicated very well because we have situations like that. Val is a great example of that. It's just like, okay, well, you might have a second or two of DPS time because of his animation to come out of the ground, but then as soon as he is up, you should get out of the way. But then as soon as Malachi comes up, that explosion happens. I'm obviously, I'm playing a range character, so I didn't have to deal with it, but that wasn't really communicated too well.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of people are petitioning that Act 4 get nerfed, but I think some things could just, instead of numerically be changed, as far as like how much damage, like the slam, if they just added some duration onto it, like zero point 0.5 or half a second longer, when he puts up his scepter and then he smashes the ground, giving people a little bit more time to react, I think that would go over well. And I don't know, maybe slow down the boss and then in future difficulties speed it up with like a global turbo mod on the thing so that people can try it in normal mode when it's like kind of slowed down, and then when they get to cruel they get the boss gets 10% haste movement and cast speed, and then and I guess merciless maybe bump it up a notch again to 20%, to where it's the normal speed. Maybe that would better, it would help people learn the mechanics, and then
Yeah, but so the only problem that I have with this is that the Awakening just came out. We have had these bosses available to players for just a week,
right.
right? Like we only had them 4 or 5 days before the launch of the Awakening. I think it is way too soon to say that these things need to be toned down or Act 4 needs to be nerfed. I mean, it is.
I don't know
I
about
do.
that.
I do wish that when they release the patch notes, and that in the patch notes it specifically said, and I hope I'm right in saying this because I'll have to cut it out, but in the patch notes it specifically said Act 4 content is supposed to be for elite players.
Yeah, but you still have to go through cruel and normal.
Exactly. That's why I don't like them saying that, because
Yeah, I mean, I don't like the whole. Yeah, I don't like the way they worded that either. But I don't know. I just feel like they're very interesting mechanics, and
mhm,
I think it's only been released and only been tested for so long. The initial response. I mean, they have to be quick to react to the community. If everybody is upset with this thing, then they need to approach it in a different manner. Like let people get familiar with the mechanics, or
right.
don't be as punishing, but you maybe ramp it up a notch. I still think the difficulty is there, and for me, I've been playing this game for over 2 years, almost every day, and I still say that this fight is difficult. Even having experience on this thing, I'm still finding it very difficult. I mean, that's a really high expectation, even in Cruel,
But
for other players to.
do you think that the difficulty is coming from the fact that it just takes so long and that there's so many opportunities for error on the side of the player, as opposed to it actually just being really hard?
No, I like that. I really like that the HP is high. It makes it feel like a raid boss. There's multiple phases. It kind of makes it feel MMO-y, if
Right.
that makes any sense. But if it requires a long, I mean, I feel like there's too many bosses in this game where I just murk them down in a matter of seconds. But this is the one situation where I'm having to take my time and whittle away at the fight, at the same time trying to stay alive and keep up my buffs, and all that stuff feels really good. But somebody that's familiar with the game and that didn't necessarily test the beta or doesn't know what to expect, they're probably going to have a really negative reaction to, oh my god, what the hell is up with this game? All of a sudden, I'm getting my shit pushed in, and this is unjust or unjustified. But I didn't feel like any of those bosses in the new Act 4. I walked in with that mindset, same thing. I just ran around in circles, enfeebled, tried to guess what they were doing, and then I approached the fight. But like you said, not many people are going to take that approach, and they're just going to go in and be like, oh, so that's what that does, and
Right.
you just die and lose their character.
Well, and to add to that real quick, so you were saying like, you played throughout the beta, you had a little bit of experience playing it near the end of the beta. Although it's only been out for a week, we still have players that didn't play any of the beta, right?
Mm-hmm.
That they're not used to the new mechanics. They've maybe taken a break from Path of Exile and they're coming back to this. So this is definitely going to be, you know, along the line. It's going to be difficult. I mean, it's difficult for everybody, but there's something else that we're kind of forgetting about, I think, is that with the expansion, with Awakening coming out, we're going to have a lot of fresh new players, like people who never touched Path of Exile, especially with, because it really seems like that the community, the gaming community, the action RPG community is receiving the Awakening extremely well. So I think we're going to have a lot of fresh new players coming to the game. And we've always kind of talked about the difficulty from going from Act 2 to Act 3, right? How it's a pretty big jump. And then you get to Act 3 and Scepter of God. That's pretty hard. Then you get to Dominus. Pretty hard. This is a whole other level, right?
Yeah.
Like the content in Act 4 is considerably harder. Comb and Duresso, not that, those fights are too bad. They're pretty hard in their own regard. I'd say they're, you know, a little bit easier than Dominus, a little bit easier than the way Act 3 used to be back in the day. But a lot of these fresh new players don't have those experiences, and
Right.
they're going to get to Comb and Duresso. They're going to be like, damn, this is hard. Or maybe you're a prodigy. Maybe you just blew right through it. I don't know. But when you get to the Harvest and when you get to Dodre, Shavron, well, Shavron was actually a pretty easy fight from what I could tell. But when you get to, you know, Malagaro, Dodre, and everything else, in Awakening, Piety, and then Malachi, those fights are insanely hard. And specifically in my guild, I know that I have 2 new players, you know, people that we've known for a long time who've never gotten into Path of Exile. But now they're like, okay, let's check out Path of Exile. And we all play hardcore. Like, we've always played hardcore. So now we have these players who have played no Path of Exile, played very little action RPGs, and they're jumping into hardcore Awakening. And when they get, and I'm just, you know, they were struggling with figuring out sockets and jewels and everything else. You know, my friend, he picked up he made a witch and he got onto the Twilight Strand and he picked up the wand and he's like, what do I do with the fireball? And he threw it on the ground 3 times before he figured out to put it into the wand and to use it. This guy is going to be fighting Malachi in 2 to 3 days. Like, that's such a huge gap. And, you know, just imagine if you got presented with these fights, with this content, this level of content, when you first started playing Path of Exile. That's kind of what I'm worried about.
I mean, to be fair, Chris did put a lot of emphasis in me like, hey, if you are new to this game, I highly recommend you play the Warbands League and try to figure things out.
Did he? See, I wasn't aware of that. But
Yeah, he
that
put
makes
it in
me
the-
like Chris so much more.
Yeah, I mean, but, you know, at what point are people going to be like, you know, oh, well, clearly I can't even beat the normal mode, so there's no point in me playing this game.
Yeah,
Uninstall,
I agree.
You know, that
I
could
think
be
I know where
really
you're
bad.
going with this. Yeah, I get that. And
Yeah.
you know, there has to be a degree of, you know, like, I want to overcome this. You know, hardcore isn't meant for everybody, but this is, I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is they did a great job on the difficulty of Act 4 in the Awakening. I love it. But
Yeah, fun for us.
Yeah,
but
it's
not
fun
so
for us, but
for, you know, people that are just getting into it or just.
there are
you know,
some concerns with it, for sure.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the thing with like this game. When you understand like what Lightning Thorns is, and you've seen it in Promenade, and you know they can do little subtle things like the hula hoop graphic on the Shavron fight. You know, every now and then you'll see that lightning. You're like, "What the hell is this?" And you start hitting it, and you're like, "Oh, that must be Lightning Thorns." That was communicated through me through other things that I've seen in the game of playing over, you know, for a long period of time. I understand that. Oh, that's Lightning Thorns. That means I shouldn't touch it or I shouldn't hit it. But somebody maybe going to town with like Molten Strike, teeing off when he's, you know, teeing off on Shavron when she has that up, you know, could have a really horrible experience and not know what the hell just happened. And maybe he just gets into that downward spiral of hopelessness and just like, man, this game is too hard. I'm not cut out for it. I'm just gonna quit.
Well, hopefully nobody feels like that, because
Yeah.
I mean, I like this rush of players that we're getting, the fresh the freshness that we're getting out of the expansion. And they've done a great job with it so far. But I want to shift the subject a little bit to just kind of the leveling experience in general. Instead of, obviously we've talked about Act 4, but how do you feel about the leveling experience now compared to what it was before?
I mean, it's different. Number one, the most noticeable thing, after playing the beta for so long, is joining trade chat. It auto assigned me
Oh,
to trade chat 42, and I was like, whoa, whoa. I'm used to seeing like trade chats 1 through 4 just from the beta. But yeah, that was definitely a good experience. I was able to sell items, repost my shop. But aside from that, with Leech changing, it's no longer like get a pretty decent weapon that does physical damage, get these nodes, and then you're set on mana. Like mana is completely different. Leech is completely different. Doesn't feel anywhere near the same. And I'm finding myself relying on more mana regen mechanics and the usage of Rallying Cry to sustain, and finding it much more reliable. In addition, the huge change that I feel is like one of my favorite things is the mana flask. I'm now using a hallowed mana flask that does 4 charge use, and it's rolled ample, so it's got 38 charges total. So I could use this 9 times and then some before it's essentially like my whole flask bar was, it only used to be what, 3 charges or 2 charges.
right. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, before, and now I can use it 9 times. It's like my entire flask bar is filled with mana flask, and I'm only using one. So keeping it low, 290 mana over 7 seconds is just enough to replenish as I'm spending, and I can hit it a lot of times. That's a huge quality of life, and I actually like the mana flask now. It's not so bad. Granted, going forward, down the road when I have Elrion jewelry, I'm just going to use that and
Right.
trivialize it, just swap it with another
Yeah,
Quicksilver.
well, you might as well. That's optimizing your build, and I think that's to add on to what you said. I think that's the perfect place for the mana flask, because nobody wants to have a mana flask on their bar at the in the end game, just because you're hoping that your build is optimized enough that you don't have to worry about it.
Right.
But having them be such low charges is a
Yeah.
really good change. And I agree. And there are also the passes on the tree that I know you and I have talked about it a little bit before, but Druidic Rite, amazing. One of the best passives on the tree. I mean, it gives you 15% increased mana. Well, I'm not going to say the numbers, but it gives you percent increased mana, flat mana, increased charges gained for flasks, and increased duration of flasks. So, I mean, the changes to flasks for the Awakening, I think, are really good. And on top of that, we have really good passives on the tree that complement it well.
Yeah. Primal Spirit gives you 20% flash charges gain in addition to all the other goodies.
Yeah, Primal Spirit's really strong, especially on that side of the tree, because it gives you strength and intelligence. And most of the time, if you're over there, chances are you're going to be a dex-based character, and you're going to be hurting for those base stats anyway.
Yeah, and to the west of that, you have Arcane Chemistry, which is reduced flash charges used. And these all have the similar stats with max mana, flat mana, and then you have Profane Chemistry. I mean, I love the emphasis on the bottom right-hand side of the tree with the flask and mana interaction.
Yeah, it was the side of the tree that really needed it.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was definitely a good move. But, so in regards to leveling experiences, I kind of want to talk about something, and it's kind of going to be a rant, and I apologize, but it's about Poison Arrow, and it's about leveling as a bow character. Leveling as a bow character is so absurd. It's so just annoying. Like, it's just not good. You can't do it. Most people, Great One is someone that I'm going to reference right now, but on Great One's stream right now, he was re-leveling a character after he died, and he used Spectral Throw, which was bad also. But it was still better than leveling as a bow. Like, leveling as a bow user is obnoxious. I level pretty fast when I play Path of Exile, but I was stubborn and I kept using split arrow and everything else, and it was so awful. And then on top of that, here's the worst part. So with the way poison arrow works, generally right around the time you would have finished normal is when poison arrow damage starts to do well enough on its own that you could use it by itself, right? That's when you could start doing the whole poison arrow playstyle, which is honestly pretty fast because you could just run through maps or you could just run through zones, poison arrow things, dies. The leveling experience for poison arrow is pretty good. It was pretty good beyond Act 3 and, the end of Act 4, what it was in beta, before we had Malachi, before we had these end bosses. But now with Act 4, with Malachi, with that ending, it delays Poison Arrow even longer, and that made Malachi so much harder for me because of how terrible bows are. They are so bad. I understand you could get a Death's Harp. I understand that you could just get a Death's Harp and, that should solve a lot of it, but that's a level 30 unique. Like, the 30 levels before that were AIDS. So, again, back up. I'm sorry. That was a rant. I apologize, but yeah, I don't even know how that's going to go. We could leave it at that. I just wanted to complain.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of had a similar experience. It's really, again, when you get that crude bow and Gropo, you're just like, man, it still feels horrible. And like any quiver, it felt so abysmal. I mean, until I got that Death's Harp. Well, Doomfletch is now in the mix. If you find that at 28, I think you can get a little boost. But yeah, it's pretty much Doomfletch, Death's Harp, and you have to get like really lucky along the way. I mean, but you could use Death's Harp till maps. It's just a matter of getting how much does that go for early
They're
on?
going for 5 chaos right now.
Yeah, 4 to 5 chaos. That's not exactly
not
affordable.
Ideal.
Yeah, so I can understand you early on in a league, fresh league. You may want to go Spectral Throw and then transition into bow. That's probably a great idea.
But the problem with that is Spectral Throw is still terrible. Like, that is still terrible. So, it was painful watching Great One use Spectral Throw.
I mean, once with my Voltaxic guy, I did it self-found, and I started self-found, but I got pretty lucky with the drops, as far as finding upgrades for bows. Getting them linked was a whole other issue, but once I started using Lightning Arrow, it definitely picked up. I don't know. I didn't really try the other arrows because it just felt really, really lackluster. I think I was using Burning Arrow and Lightning Arrow around level 30s, and it started to kick off. But before level 30, it was just so painful.
Yeah,
I wanted to kill myself.
And I know Ziggy D has said this before too, that leveling as a bow user, and he did this recently. I think he made a YouTube video specifically for it, but it's really bad. And what sucks about it is, bows are kind of popular right now. They've Voltaxic Rift is making a comeback with Lightning Arrow. Poison Arrow is really strong right now. Split Arrow is great. Tornado Shot is still Tornado Shot. And, the reason that I stuck with using the bow from 1 to 30 instead of just using Spectral Throw like most intelligent people will do. I'm definitely, I knew it was not a good idea for me to do it, but the reason...
You're masochistic.
Yeah, the reason why I didn't do it was because I don't like to play one way for 30 levels, even if it is, you could get level 30 in 3 or 4 hours. That's not difficult. But I want, when I play a character, I don't want to play it one way and then shift and play it another way. I want to play it the same way all the way through. And
but, as a game designer, aren't you happy that your build's gonna be like really solid in maps and not just like fall off? I mean, you do have that going for you, and you're in it for the long haul, right?
Yeah, I get that, but it was that terrible. It was
you
still
want a
too
better
terrible.
Leveling experience.
Yeah, just I almost said a mild improvement, but no, I would like an improvement to leveling for bow users, just because it is really rough. Like it's just, you know,
It's
the
demoralizing seeing like
it is.
starting at the same time as your buddy, and then or people on the ladder, and you're normally like a fast player, and these guys are like 20 or 30 levels ahead of you just because you stuck with bows.
Right. Well, and then it's also, another side of it is it's actually kind of hard to explain to new players. They're like, oh, like my friends who joined, our guild today who finally started playing Path of Exile. One of them's like, well, I want to make a bow character because I loved playing, my Amazon with Barista and Diablo 2. So I'm going to do that. I'm like, no, don't. Like, don't do it right now. Do it when you're level 30. And they're like, what do you mean? Like, why can't I do it now? I'm like, just don't. It's you will not enjoy this game
So
if
you're
you
saying it's up to the community to communicate to other players what, that but don't have high expectations
for early level
for
or
early
early
level
bow
bows.
leveling. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I
I
mean
mean,
that could be a horrible thing for like the developer. Like they're like, oh, I heard about this build. Everybody says it's good, but when I play it, it feels like shit, and they don't even make it past like 25. They just quit.
yeah, because you get Split Arrow early, right? You get Herald
Yeah.
of Ash, you get Hatred. You have all these things that makes it seem like it would be good, right? But then it's not.
They're like, what
It's
the
just
hell?
not.
The word on the streets of Wraeclast, Split Arrow is supposed to be awesome. This sucks.
Right, yeah, and it's just that's kind of a long time for it to not start
Yeah.
to ramp up. And this even kind of goes for Poison Arrow too, because I wish Poison Arrow was easier to use early, because you can't scale it very many ways. And although yes, the damage for Poison Arrow endgame is insane, I get that, but that's the long haul. That's level 3 in power. That's a +3 bow. That is so far out there if,
You
that
can do it good with a +2 bow. I mean,
oh, okay, yeah, all right.
+3 is pushing
Okay,
it
so
over the
plus
top.
2 bow and a level 2 in power. We'll just go with that. That's pretty far out there. That's not, your build isn't finished at level 80. Because it takes, especially with the changes to the gem experience, a level 2 in power is going to, I haven't accomplished it yet, but I'd imagine you're not going to get a level 2 in power till about 87, level 88. And that's, depending on when you get it. So, that's a long time for a build to get to its max, considering that it is so bad until like level now 45, 50. So, yeah, I don't know. End rant. I apologize.
What's your currency situation? Have you noticed any changes? Like for me personally, I've seen that, because of the difficulty in Act 4, I am, instead of hoarding all my currency, getting ready for maps, I'm using it as they come.
Right.
I mean,
Like alking things.
yeah, I'm using every alc that I find. Like literally as I find it, I have things waiting, like 4 linked items just waiting. And then like I'll have like good rares that need fusings and jewelers, but I'm really, really cheap when it comes to, should I 4 link this? Should I spend potentially up to like 10 fusings worth of jewelers and fuses to get this running, or but it's I don't know how I'm gonna approach. I'm sure it'll be fine, but usually I have a huge lump sum saved up, ready to go, when I'm about to do maps, so that I can get all my resist capped, my HP a little bit higher, no problems with my resource, just PoE trading it. And now, let's see, if I look at my stash, I have like 1 Regal, 4 Chaos, 50 Jewelers, 9 Fusings, a GCP, a couple Regrets, and 9 Scour, and then like 100 alts. It's usually way more than that at this level. So I'm curious if I'm going to be able to buy any upgrades, or I'll have to craft them myself.
I mean, yeah, I agree, because I've actually been alking. Well, not I agree. I've been alking a lot of the stuff that I've been coming across too. So I'm currently also low on alks, but I've actually been having luck with finding GCPs and Regals. I don't know why, but just RNG. But yeah, with the difficulty of the content, you feel much more inclined, or you feel much more obligated to Alka 4 link or Alka 3 link, and you're just hoping for something good, which is good because, right, it encourages low level crafting, right, which is something that we've all kind of had to do here and
But
there.
I like hoarding.
Yeah, but no, I agree, because the difficulty of the content does make it where you feel like you need to alch stuff, you need to get dual res and life just so you feel safe. But another thing that I've actually really found exciting with the Awakening is that we have the return of a lot of the I don't want to say coveted, but a lot of the streamers that we usually don't see. I don't want to start this conversation off with biases. So, are there any streamers that you like to see that are coming back to Path of Exile, or that you're just excited to see actually putting like real effort into Path of Exile again?
I'll be honest, since I stream and play the game so much, I don't really have time. But if I were to wish, I wish everybody to stream, honestly. Having, a wide variety of streamers, something for everybody. Everybody has their personal preference. And as long as the numbers are bigger, as a whole, then it's just creating more exposure. There is one person, while I'm not watching streams, that I wish was streaming that wasn't, or that isn't right now. It's a dude named Man Ocean. He's very,
Oh,
very
Mano.
entertaining. I love just like, eating my lunch and then seeing what kind of shenanigans he's getting into. But yeah, he's currently not streaming Path. Mano, if you're listening to this, turn that shit on.
Yeah, Mano's like off at a beach somewhere again, a tan, being really good looking. I don't know what he's doing, but
You jelly?
yeah, I am, man. Mano is a good looking. He's a good looking video gamer. And, I'm not bad looking, but I ain't Man Ocean. That's for damn sure. But anyway, yeah, I mean, who I really like to watch Alkaiser play, and he's coming from Diablo 3. I'd imagine a lot of you, have seen him play here and there. I like his style of stream, and it's kind of funny how he lets his chat just go hog wild. But I like watching Alkaiser. I've also enjoyed watching Alkaiser recently because he's died a couple times, and it's pretty. It's just funny. We've had a lot of like notable streamer deaths. I mean, Alkaiser his ripped. Hellman had his rip. I mean, it's just I don't know. Do you think we've had more rips than usual at the start of a league recently?
No, I don't know if it's because of the beta or whatever. Like when we were doing beta on normal, like I said, I honestly felt even with the information given, people were spreading information and people were still ripping like crazy. But we didn't see that many, see that much spam in global chat, with all the normal deaths. So I think I'm kind of convinced that there was some kind of AI tuning with what's his name, Malachi at the last minute, but I don't know. I could be wrong. The deaths, they could be coming faster, but
Yeah, because there definitely are a lot of people who are probably holding off, especially since Angry Weasel went out and killed Malachi. Like, was that within 24 hours? It wasn't within 24 hours, was it?
yeah, I think it was.
Yeah, he went and won the Alienware laptop that GGG was giving away. So, there's definitely a lot of people who are probably holding back and being
Crazy props to them. But I'm kind of salty about the whole giveaway thing because, they had really big prizes and they had two of them. And I would have much rather have seen some kind of, race to 100 Alienware laptop giveaway. And then maybe given something, maybe like a supporter pack or some points, like 2,000 points for, the first person to kill Malachi. Because that's like a 24-hour race. I still want to see something exciting, people working at something to make something nice and trying to get to 100 so that, we have something to see day in and day out on Twitch TV, whether it be softcore or hardcore.
Well, I'm glad you said that because I 100% disagree with you. I
Wow,
think a
really?
race to 100 would have been boring because you don't watch it. You don't watch a race to 100. A race
I
to
do.
you don't sit there and watch your computer screen for 2 weeks straight. You do not watch every bit of a race to 100. But you know what everyone did watch every bit of last night? Angry Weasel fighting Malachi. They watched every bit of Hellman walking into Malachi and getting smashed. It was a short bit, but they watched every bit of it.
Well, yeah, I don't watch every bit of it, but when people have that fire under their ass, like, it's not necessarily at 100. Like, you get a race the entire way. When you have like five people that are really close to each other on the ladder and they're all streaming, you can see what they're doing and which kind of risks they're taking. While they're not near their goal, they're still aiming for it. They still have that motivation and that push. So they're, min-maxing in all kinds of ways. And
Yeah,
that's what I
well,
really like seeing is the passion,
I mean, I get that, but the passion was still there, right? Like it wasn't like
Yeah, it
E-Tup,
was just
or
fast.
not E-Tup. It wasn't like Hellman and Ingrizel weren't there, because you saw his reaction when he won, right? You saw how stressed he was. I will admit that I wish there were a few more players in the mix of who could have done it, because as far as I remember, as far as I could tell, it was only like Hellman, Angry Weasel, and then someone else. I don't know who, but I thought there was someone else who was really close. But it would have been nice to see a little bit more excitement near the end of it. But
Okay, were you there when it happened live?
yeah,
Okay, so can you give me like a rough number estimate of how many viewers were watching Angry Whistle at the time and Hellman?
they were when okay. So I was watching Hellman first, and I
Hmm.
think Angry Weasel had already started. Angry Weasel had about 900 viewers when he had already started, but I think a lot more people were watching Hellman specifically because he was melee.
And how many viewers were there
He
at
had
that time?
about 3,200 at the time of his death.
Okay. I mean, when the Havoc Moors race to Atziri happened, that was over 5,000 viewers. Like,
And so this is close, but I think Aziri was meant to be as a more difficult encounter.
oh, it was a longer period of time. Yeah, and a lot of new interest introduced like mechanics that people
Yeah,
were just
because
trying to figure out.
and there are other things that make Aziri actually a much harder fight to just do, because but she
Right.
can't be shocked, she can't be frozen. She's not affected by status ailments. She reflects curses. There are a bunch of things about Aziri that make it a just a much more difficult fight. But yeah, so Aziri was just a much more difficult fight, and I don't know. You said there was about 5,000 people watching it, right?
Each stream, yeah,
Okay,
Moors
each stream.
and Hellman,
I don't
over
think
5,000.
I don't think we had that many people. We obviously didn't have that many people watching this time around, because I think we peaked at around 13,000 viewers on Path of Exile on Twitch.
Mhm.
I might be wrong on that number, but I seem to remember seeing 13,000. But I mean, I think a lot more people were just playing this time around too. Like, I don't know, since Aziri was a more difficult fight, and it was like, and on top of that, Aziri, you only did Aziri once. When people play Awakening, they're gonna kill Malachi 3 times, right? Like, there are actually 3 times that you do Malachi. You do him in normal, cruel, and merciless. While Aziri was just like whoever gets to the map first, and then who could figure out how to do it. That was just completely different. So I don't think it's really fair to compare the viewers that we saw in the Aziri fight to the one that we saw in the Malachi fight, because of those reasons. I mean, the Aziri fight is just there are new
But they could have
mechanics.
still made it an exciting race and just given
It
away
was an exciting
points.
race, but it's
I
also
know.
exciting for us all to have the expansion out.
Right, right. I'm not saying to take away the race. I'm just
Right.
saying to supplement the reward and use the laptops, which are big rewards, for something that's more long term.
Yeah.
Big rewards for bigger payout. I definitely think that. I'm not saying that the Malachi race was wrong. I just wish that they used something, a prize like with the
Right.
magnitude of a prize that big over a long period of time and given them something else. Just so we have something to watch. And I like seeing pressure and I like seeing that drive by a lot of people, especially when they get close. And it doesn't even have to be level 100. It could just be the number one spot. Maybe no one ever hits level 100 in hardcore or warbands
Yeah,
this
I
go
just
around.
I just think that would be too long. But my only issue with kind of adding a few more prizes, for person who's second or extending the race, is just that this was already a lot, right? And I don't think we should ever get into a point where we expect more and more from GGG. And I'm not necessarily saying that you're saying that, but I think that's how it could kind of come across to some people that
Well,
they should have done more. But that honestly, like,
I
with
don't think it's GGG that's supplying the thing. It's Alienware that's partnered with GGG. So I
hmm,
don't think it's coming out of GGG's pocket. It's more like Alienware is donating for their marketing exposure to, our player base or Path of Exile's player base.
well, either way, the race was exciting. It was exciting for what it was, and I liked watching it. I mean, just in case you guys don't know, we've alluded to it a couple times. I know we've said it, but Hellman just got smashed immediately. He walked in, he just got like dunked by Malachi and just started laughing hysterically. It was awesome. And then, 20 minutes later, we have Angry Weasel going into second phase of Malachi, and he won. So I'm sorry if you're looking at this as like, oh, Wabacha, you're giving the spoiler alert, you're rude. Sorry, you should already know this, but I mean, Angry Weasel, like, he was like tense and just, you saw him like stop. He used like 60 portals. I mean, he just, you could see the concentration in his face, and when he did it, he just like blew up in excitement, and then everyone started to say that he was French, but he's actually Danish. But it was an interesting fight, and it was fun to watch. So you guys should definitely go check that out on the VODs, especially
Don't
the
worry,
Hellman
guys.
one.
He'll link it to you in the description.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, I'll link it in the description below.
My
But it was fun to watch.
my favorite part of the replay with Angry Weasel was at the end when he was like, "Yes, yes," and then he's like, "Oh, sorry for screaming into the
Oh
mic." I
yeah,
was
yeah.
like,
It wasn't
I
even that
was
loud.
like, what is he talking about, dude? He should just nerdgasm. Who cares how
Yeah, who
loud he
cares?
is? That's awesome.
Yeah, get
Yeah.
over it. Yeah, yeah. It was really fun to
He's
watch.
such a nice guy. He's like, "Oh, sorry for yelling into the mic."
Yeah, right. I wouldn't have thought about that. I would have kept
Yeah.
yelling.
Yeah,
Murdered
you would have seen
ears.
that vein pop out of the side of my neck.
Right. Like, I can't believe I just did that. So, I mean, with all that said, I think the Awakening release has been a great success. As of right now, we're only 2 days into it, and I might be jumping the shark a little bit here and saying that it's really good so far, but it looks like a lot of people are having fun. We have a lot of people streaming it right now, and I'm really excited to play it. I'm interested to see what you guys think and what you're excited about with the Awakening, and what builds you're excited about doing, or what you are doing. Again, leave a comment below. Let us know what you think about the Awakening so far, what build you're doing, or any funny moments you've had. Shit, if you have a VOD or a video, a replay on your stream, email it to me at whatsupwraeclast@gmail.com, and we'll check it out, and maybe we'll talk about it. So it's been a lot of fun, and I'm gonna go ahead and end off with that. Hedgie, anything you want to say?
No, just feel free to check me out at twitch.tv/Hegemony TV. Your feedback is very important to us, and yeah, we do listen. So anything that you can suggest that we talk about, or any tips that you can give us, greatly appreciated.
So with that said, thank you guys very much for listening to What's Up Wraeclast, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.